Good afternoon. My name is Meg Griffin, and we are here at the Carroll County Public Library, the Finksburg branch, and we're talking to Carol Hackney and Alice Altstatt about their memories of growing up here in Carroll County. Welcome, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us.
I would like to hear first is where were you born and your sisters? So were you both born in the same house or hospital?
Hospital,
Okay.
Johns Hopkins, in
okay.
Baltimore.
Okay.
A while ago.
A while ago, long enough
Mhm.
that you've seen a lot of changes in the county.
Mostly,
So
yes.
when you were born in Baltimore, but then did you live here in Carroll County, or where
No,
did you start out?
We started out in Baltimore.
Okay.
My parents had a home in Roland Park, Baltimore, for 3 years. And my mother had always wanted to have a farm, or
Oh.
preferably a ranch in Wyoming, raising beef cattle. And she had had a classmate in college whose she came from Wyoming. Her parents had a big farm, and this classmate would ask classmates out to spend the summer, 2 or 3 months at a time. And my mother went several years, and in spite of being a New York native, she decided she wanted to live in Wyoming and have a ranch. She met my father out there on an adjoining ranch one time, and fell in love with him, and they got married, and they had to wait until he finished law school, but she, about that time, had to give up the idea of moving to Wyoming, because his family was from Pittsburgh, hers was from Stamford, Connecticut, and they decided to settle in Baltimore, which was in between the two
Mhm.
families. And so they bought a house in Baltimore. They had a lot of friends in Baltimore as well. But somewhere along the line, and I can still remember this, she began dragging him out into the country on weekends just to look at farms. And eventually, and I went along. I guess I was about 3 years old. They started taking me along. I remember several of the places. They found Cold Saturday. They were driving along 91 and saw the big evergreen trees that surround the house there. And they couldn't see the house, but she said, "I think there's a house back there. It's really a nice place. Can't we go back and look?" And so they went back and looked, and they saw the stone house, and just fascinated by that. And there was a guy sitting on the front porch steps, and they asked, my mother asked, not my father, "Is this place ever been for sale?" And sure enough, it was.
Huh.
To make a long story short, they bought it. This was in 1932.
Wow.
And we moved out. I don't remember the date or anything. I mean, I know the year, but that's how we ended up in Finksburg.
So you basically just both grew up right there in
Yes.
Cold Saturday, it's called.
Yes, we have a family of 4. We have 2 younger brothers,
Hmm.
and we all spent our childhood there.
And what was it like? What was a typical day there when you were very young, as far back as you can remember? What did you have to do? I mean, did you actively farm?
Well, the farm came with 2 tenant farmers, and it was an active dairy farm. My mother speedily got rid of the dairy herd. It was in the Depression area.
Yeah.
Dairy was not a good business to be in. They were not making any money, and she exchanged those for the initial crowd of beef cattle, 10 steers she gave my father for Christmas.
Oh.
They were white faces, and they subsequently changed to Angus. But they raised corn, wheat, a lot of hay for the Angus that she eventually invested in. But we didn't have to do a lot of work as young kids. I mean, it was just playtime for us. We had a big sandbox in the backyard, and a pony came with the farm too. And numerous animals came with the farm. Team of draft horses, team of mules, the dairy herd, black pony, tenant farmers, chickens, um, a dog or two, and numerous cats. So
Wow. It must have been quite a change for you then and your family, going from Roland Park to lots of animals and
Yes.
country living.
Well, it was a lot of fun.
Did your father continue with the law business?
Yes, and he commuted to Baltimore.
Oh.
There used to be a little train from Cedarhurst, originally Asbestos, which is the train station for Finksburg.
I see.
And I don't know why it has a separate name, but it did. And that train, I think, ran up to New Brunswick or maybe a little farther, Western Maryland Railway, and into Baltimore City. And it was very convenient for him because he kept up his law practice and then eventually became a judge in Baltimore. And
Must have been an amazing man to be able to do the law business and then have the farm on the side. So your mother, I assume, did the lion's share of running the farm.
you're right. Neither of them knew much about farming when they came out here, but they took courses at the University of Maryland School of Agriculture. And it was kind of an OJT situation. You learn by doing. And of course, the two farmers that were there already were a big help.
Yes.
And, you want me to keep?
Yeah, well, you can. I mean, if there's any
Oh,
stories or anecdotes you can remember from back then, even with the tenant farmers or
Well,
any.
one thing that we both remember quite clearly is we raised corn and oats and grain and things, and we used to drive up the roads around, the secondary roads around the area were mostly dirt roads then. And there was a place on Kays Mill Road. It was a mill. And
Yeah.
it was owned by the Kays, and it was functioning. Comet Roller Mills, it was called. And my father would get to drive. They'd sack up the corn and the oats and one thing and another and take it over there and have it ground up. And we rode on top. You remember riding on
Oh, well.
those wagons?
Pulled by a team of horses, too.
Yeah, they drive the horses over there. It wasn't made into flour. My mother wasn't into
No.
grinding up flour and making bread, but they cracked the corn for chicken
Yeah.
feed and rolled the oats on for horses. So they just crushed it.
Yeah.
And drive back home, all on dirt roads.
Well, with you guys bumping along on top of the sacks. Oh, that sounds like lots of fun.
I can't remember how many years it was that we did that, but not very long, because the mill went out of business, unfortunately. And unfortunately, the Historical Society, I don't know if it was even founded at that point, but they would have loved to have had it. They have had it on a calendar, an old picture of that mill, but they would like to have had restored. It's become a Finksburg fish and game shooting range or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, is the house that you grew up in, do either of you still live there?
No. I live on part of Coal Saturday Farm that we kept. When my mother died, it was sold, and I don't remember the total acreage. The buyers didn't want the whole thing, and so sister and brother and I kept back 75 acres, which by then, after the reservoir had gotten put in, and that took 75 acres of best land.
Oh, of your farm, your own,
Yes,
that went to
right,
the
yeah, took
reservoir.
the creek and a lot of pasturage. And about that time, my mother bought an adjoining farm that was on Deer Park Road, but connected with ours. And the farmer wanted to sell it, and so she bought that to replace the 75 acres that the reservoir had taken, city of Baltimore had taken. And a part of that was the 75 acres that we kept back when the place was sold. And thinking that each of us someday might want to have a place 25 acres to retire to. Which didn't quite work out. Other plans came along, and I've ended up with the whole 75 acres. which is part of the original Cold Saturday, but it fronts on Deer Park now.
I see.
And the original house has had two owners now.
Mm-hmm.
We can visit it.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice that it's
It's been
still
on-
there.
It's been on some heritage tours and things like that. There was one last spring, and the current owner, is a very nice guy who is very interested in historical places. And when he got it, the place was in bad shape, and he wanted to restore it, not renovate it, not remodel. And we met him, and Carroll found out who was doing this. We went down there and visited him. There were rolls of wallpaper on the floor and plaster dust everywhere. He was stripping it. He had to do the whole infrastructure over, plumbing and electricity and stuff. And he asked if we had any pictures
Yeah.
when we lived there, so he could restore it pretty much the same way. He wanted to know what it looked like.
Oh, so a lot of changes had taken place to the house from the time you grew up in it to.
No, not really, but it was just in bad shape. And
Not from us. We did not leave it in bad shape, but then the next owners came along, and they didn't take care of the place at all.
Oh, that's
no,
a
no
shame.
structural changes, really.
No.
The major one, my mother there was a kitchen wing, and my mother put a second story over that kitchen wing for master bathroom and other things. But that fit in quite well with the house. And when we left, after seeing what Mr. Bean was doing, we asked if he could come back after he got it all fixed up. He said, "You certainly may. You may come back any time. It's your place as much as mine."
Oh,
Oh,
boy,
so
that's
nice.
great.
We've been doing that
Yeah.
ever since. We show it off when relatives come.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It
Many
is.
people can do that, go back to their childhood home.
Oh, we're so lucky that those lovely people have that place because they are really taking care of it now. It was on the tour this past May,
Oh, really?
and my sister and I were both the hostesses over there for them because we knew so much of the history of the place, having lived there as long as we had.
Yeah.
But they're so gracious and just welcome everybody. I'll tell you a story about they were both there, down in Florida. They went down there for a little vacation, and they went to a restaurant in a Saturday night, and their table wasn't ready for them, so they went to the bar to have a drink. And they sat down, they're both very outgoing, and sat down beside a couple whom they had no idea who it was. And, "Oh, hello, my name is Garnett Bean, and I'm Charles Moritz." "Oh, where are you from?" "Well, I'm from Connecticut." "Well, I'm from Maryland." "Oh, really? Where in Maryland?" "In Finksburg." He says, "I got some cousins used to live in Finksburg. Have you ever heard of Cold Saturday?" And Garnett Bean said, "I bought it."
Oh, really?
It's a wonderful story. Yeah.
Yeah.
They,
Boy, what a small world.
isn't it though, just to happen to be sitting right beside one another
Yeah.
at the time.
It's a good thing they
And
were outgoing.
another wonderful story about the farm is we were brought up Republican, and Daddy roomed with Adlai Stevenson at Princeton, who was a Democrat. And he came out one year for Thanksgiving dinner. And Daddy invited a bunch of Princeton friends out, and they were having a grand time talking. And finally, Mr. Stevenson said, "Who's going to vote for me?" And Daddy said, "We told you we're not going to talk about politics." Well, he just couldn't help himself. But he didn't like what Daddy said. Daddy said, "We're all Republicans, and you know perfectly well we're not going to vote for you." So
Jeez.
Stevenson was a brilliant, brilliant man. He really was. So Daddy finally said, "I want you to go out to the barn. I want to show you my cattle." He was so pleased, so proud of his Angus herd, most of which my mother had put together. So on the way out to the barn, they passed a manure spreader. And Mr. Stevenson jumped up on the manure spreader, and he said, "I want you to know," now this was the year that he was running for the presidency, "that this is the first time a Democratic candidate had run for the presidency of the United States standing on a Republican platform." It's one of the funny stories. They're really marvelous. But I'd like to go back to old Finksburg.
Yeah.
Back in 1932, when the parents bought it, and as my sister said, we were both very young then. We had one brother, but another one yet to come. But to look back on it, 91 was just a very narrow little concrete road. 140 was blacktop, but it was only 2-lane, and it went on up past Westminster, and it went on over to Reisterstown. And in Reisterstown, where you turned right to go into the town, and on out the other side of the town. Then it became a 4-lane highway, one of the very few 4 lanes then. So that was what it was. But Finksburg was just a little crossroads. There's an old brick house up there. It was then the post office of Finksburg, and it was a little country store. You could buy bread and coffee and just little things, not very much. And so we used to go in there every morning on the way to school and get the mail. And my mother, during the war, was making butter because it was rationed, you know, and we had cows, and so she'd make the butter and to go up there and sell it to the store. Of course, they were very grateful for that. But the Methodist church is still there on the corner. As I say, it was just a little crossroads. And Mann's Produce was on the corner. Roger Mann's family, he inherited later, but it was his family before that. That was on that corner. The old brick building. Oh, there was a gas station. What was the name of that gas station?
Sunoco.
No.
Rotens.
No, right, yeah. Donald Roten, exactly. And the stand. And, well, Cedarhurst, as my sister said, was not Cedarhurst then. It was called asbestos, which, of course, is a very bad thing. And my father was very influential. I don't know how they came up with the name of Cedarhurst, but everybody thought that was better than asbestos.
Sure sounds like it.
The old Congolium Nairn was down there making whiskey. And you could smell. The distillery was there. And you could hear the horn going off every day at noontime, and you could smell the aroma coming up over the hill when the wind was blowing in the right direction. Yeah, and let's see, we're talking about Kay's Mill. I wish it were still there. But at that time, the road was Kay's Mill Road. But then somehow 2 people got mixed up when they put the signs, and they put the wrong sign. It's now known as Hughes Road because there was a family of Hughes lived up on top of the hill. So that should have been Hughes Road, and Kay's Mill should have been, but it's, at least you know now that it used to be the old Kay's Mill Road.
Did you mention the Mrs. Horners?
Yeah, the 2 old ladies. Go ahead.
2 ladies that owned the red brick building that was the general store and post office.
Yeah.
Miss Maud and Miss Ethel Horner. And they were just the nicest ladies, and they also had a candy counter in there, which we visited quite frequently. Stand there picking out penny candy. One of those, 2 of those. They'd always add a little bit in with that.
They were so sweet. I wish they were still here.
One corner of the building was the post office. It was fenced off, a cage like post offices had, used to have. And they had an old pot-bellied stove in another corner. You could sit around in the wintertime. I don't know when, I had grown up and left by that time, so I'm not sure when that business went out of business. Do you?
Did they live upstairs in
Yes.
that big house? I thought they did. Yeah.
Is it still there, the
Yes,
building?
It's very much still there. It's been remodeled. There are 2 apartments in it, and I've been in it. I just went in there.
Curiosity.
It's very nicely done.
So you 2, how did you, it seems like you were very, you knew your way around the community. As teenagers, was there much to do here in Finksburg? What did you do?
Not where we were. No, we were kind of off the beaten track. Of course, then the war came along, and it was hard to get gasoline. But we had, after the old pony that came with the farm, after she left, both my parents liked to ride, and so they had horses, and they got us ponies. So my sister and I did a lot of riding. And we met some of the neighbors that way, including the whole Armacost family, which is one of my favorites. And then you could ride back then. You could ride almost all the way to Westminster and never see a paved road. They were all dirt roads. Yeah, and of course the Carrollton Hounds came through there, and they put up nice panels for jumping over, and so we had a lot of fun doing that way, and met neighbors that also rode with us. That part of it was very nice. And another interesting story about, of course I can talk more about Cold Saturday than I can about Finksburg itself.
Oh, well, that's fine.
But the main attraction I think that my parents had about getting the farm was they both loved animals, and we certainly inherited their love of animals. We have dogs, we have horses, etc. And there were plenty of those on the farm. And we
Guinea
would,
pigs.
and the who?
Guinea pigs.
Oh, the guinea pigs, and then they got
Rabbits.
ducks. One story was a lovely story about a very mean old sow, and a sow, you know, is a lady pig.
Right.
And she was nasty, and so one day she got out, and she went out this road to the old tobacco barn, and she laid down, and she had a litter of piglets. And
Jeez.
we couldn't get near her because she was so mean. So my mother was very ingenious. She figured this out. And my father drove the old car, and my mother was holding a butterfly net, and she reached down and scooped out a piglet and swung around and put it in the car and put the whole litter in, and left the last one she left out. And then Daddy backed up the hill, and the old sow came along to catch up with her piglet. People just can't believe some of the things that my parents did. They were very ingenious. And another interesting thing, that during the war, and there were quite a few farmers that did this, had German soldiers that were prisoners of war. And they had a camp, what was up the other side of Westminster. And Daddy could speak enough German that he got along, you know, to tell them what to do. And every 5 prisoners, they had a guard, and the guard always had a gun. And they were watched over very carefully, but they were the nicest young men. A lot of them said they wanted to come back here and live, and they all wanted to work for my father after that. And one of the things that they had every day, they had a raw bacon sandwich and a cheese sandwich and a bottle of water. And so we had cows, and Daddy would take out a big pitcher of ice cold milk, which of course they didn't get up there, and they loved that. And the other thing was that they had this little truck that used to come around, a little pastry truck, and you could order little individual pies. And Daddy had them come in every time the prisoners were there, and let them pick out the kind of pie, you know, that they liked for their lunch that day.
Wow.
And of course they were very fond of my father, and we of them. Well, one day Daddy said to me, I'm going up to get the prisoners. Do you want to go with me? And I said, oh yeah, this is an adventure. Let's go see where the prisoners live. So he took my mother and me, and we got in this cattle truck, because that's the way we brought them down. And we got right to the edge of the campus, or whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden, Daddy put his arm around my neck, and he said, hit the floor. And I thought, oh Lord, we're going to get shot. But they got my mother down the floor too. And the prisoners were all out there bathing in the stream.
Oh. Didn't want you to see too much of the prisoners, huh?
No, he never took us back there. I wondered what happened when the winter came on. I don't know if they had any showers other than that stream.
Yeah.
You know, with what they could do. But I want to tell you a story. I get going on stories sometimes.
Oh, I love the stories.
This is a story about Eddie Armacost, one of my very favorite people. And so was his mother. His mother was like my grandmother when I was growing up. I used to just go and visit her just to be with her. So Eddie was on the farm museum board when I was up there. And one day we were talking, we built a new concrete outhouse sort of a thing. Well, it was a restroom, you should say.
Yeah.
One side for ladies and one side for men. And what happened was we had rolls of toilet paper and rolls of paper towels, but the concrete or the cinder blocks were crumbling, you know, from the jerking of the things off. And we were deciding what to do about it. And at that point, we were talking about the toilet paper roll. But Eddie thought we were talking about the paper towels. And he said, have you thought about those hot air blowers? I never let him forget that. No, Eddie. You can have them, but we don't want them. What other things can we talk about?
Well, Mom, maybe you could talk about your adventure with the German POWs.
Oh yes, I was proud of that.
Oh, her, yeah, that story.
We had a bunch of them getting hay in for us one year, and we happened to we got cut oat hay. Wasn't very popular. We usually used other things, but oat hay was okay if you didn't want the oats, and we didn't want to wait for it to be ripe and get the oats. You just cut them for hay.
Okay.
They're it's very slippery hay, like straw, which it is basically. And I was driving the tractor, and we didn't have balers in those days. Hay was made and raked up into rows, and then piled up in little hummocks, and then there'd be several guys on either side walking around with pitchforks, throwing it up on the hay wagon.
Okay.
And one day I was out there and there were two German prisoners on either side of the wagon and one on top who was spreading them out and making sure the load was evenly distributed. So it was a group of 5, and it was the last load of the day. We finished up, and we're heading back to the barn. And there was quite a steep little hill, short and small, but steep, that we had to go down to get on the road and head into the barn. And tractors have 2 brakes, one for the left side, one for the right side. So it helps with steering and with different situations. But if you want to stop the whole tractor, there was a lever, you could push them together.
Okay.
I'd forgotten to push them together and started down that hill, and we picked up the prisoners that were walking beside, and so there were 5 of them up on top of this load of slippery hay. We started down the hill, and I quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to brake, because if I stepped on one or the other, the tractor would jackknife.
Oh, jeez.
So and my foot was too small to cover them both. So the only thing to do was to speed up. So I sped up down the hill, and all of a sudden I could hear shouts from behind me. And wait, the German. I just kept going, got to the bottom of the hill, and half the load of hay had fallen off, and all the German prisoners had fallen off.
Oh, jeez.
Nobody was hurt, though. They thought it was a great idea, and they were laughing and carrying on.
They say, let's do it again.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, wow.
That was terrible. But then we have to go back to, it was Agnes and Eloise, those terrible, terrible storms. And they came in, I think it was 72 and 74. They took out a lot of bridges. They took out the railroad tracks down there in Cedarhurst. You couldn't get to Westminster any longer. I think they've since been replaced now. They have old trains that just go, not passenger trains. But at any rate, they took out, both of those storms took out the bridge that we had on the farm, the bridge that went on 91, completely out. But they were replaced, and then 2 years later, Agnes came along. Eloise was the first one, and Agnes came along and completely demolished everything all over again. That was very, very tragic. You should have seen down in Cedarhurst. Of course, those roads were all closed off. They were so bad. But they have finally been replaced, and the bridge back at the farm all the fences were washed out in the lower pasture. It was really, really a scary thing. But there was one thing that was even more scary and worse as far as I'm concerned, which happened in November of 1939, and our barn burned.
Oh.
And all our horses and all our ponies. It was absolutely heartbreaking. The cattle got out. We had a Scottish herdsman named Pete McIver, and he actually was married to Eddie Armacar's sister, Helen. And Pete got into the back of the barn where the cattle were, and he was able to get them out. They had to take him to the hospital afterwards because he was all choked up with smoke and all. But the cattle, every one of the cattle got out. He was awfully good at that, but we lost all the horses and ponies, and that was probably there's what's her name, Orvath, Anne and George. Yes.
Well, three animals, equines, survived to get out of the fire. One of them, I don't know how he got out. He was a young colt, yearling colt, draft horse. He got out, and one of the team of draft horses we had, because she was blind, and she wasn't tied up when she was in the barn. She was free. She got out, and I mentioned we had a team of mules. One of them got out. The mule was pretty badly burned and had to be put down. And the old draft horse had worked for so long with her teammate that she wasn't much good herself, and so we put her down too. And so the young colt that got out.
So that must have been traumatic for you too, because you were so fairly young. Yeah.
The whole family.
The draft team that came with the farm, as my sister said, one was a brown-colored chestnut mare, and the other was a gray mare. And between them, they had one eye. The gray mare was blind in both eyes, and the brown mare only had one eye left. So that's where they could work as a team. But then, the one could show the other one around. But there was no point in keeping, what was left.
Yeah.
That was too bad.
That's a shame. Do they know how the fire started?
Well, there are different theories. Somebody said the boys set it on fire. and there were 3 barns in Carroll County in 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And the judge said, that was very naughty. Don't you ever do that again. But I don't know that that's true, because we also had a huge, sort of a hot air blower that what was that thing called?
Dehydrator.
Yeah, the dehydrator. Daddy used to chop the hay up and put it in there, and it would heat it up so that it would not be moist anymore, and then blow it up into the hay mow, and it
Sort
could
of a
very
dry form of silage.
I see.
Silage is moist.
could very well have caused that
could have
the
been
fire,
that,
you know,
just-
from a spark from that.
Yeah.
And then there was talk about a disgruntled farmhand that we fired.
Oh, so who knows? Yeah, it
Exactly.
was just.
All we know is a man came flying in the house at 7 o'clock at night, screaming, "The barn is on fire!" I ran out. I tried to get my pony. That was all I could think of. And I remember going in the front of the barn, and he grabbed me by the belt and pulled me back out, and that was the end of that. So, but that's not a very happy story. There's some wonderful stories that go back with that, especially the Angus cattle that they showed all over the country. And my mother really had a terrific eye for judging and picking the right pedigrees and the right bullets to go with the right cows, you know, and had a fabulous reputation. Some people even, I shouldn't say this, but it's true that, well, if Cold Saturday's going to go, we won't go. They didn't want to go to the show because they were that good.
Huh.
Yeah.
They knew it was pointless, huh?
And then we got some Charolais. Beautiful. Those Charolais were magnificent. They were very rare, and they cost $5,000 the minute they were born.
Wow.
And so we were lucky. We got, I think it was 4 or 5 cows and a bull. And just to have something different, and they were that. And
They were white. Completely
pure-
different from Angus.
pure white. And they had horns, and the Angus didn't have horns. But they finally developed a breed of hornless Charolais too. But Daddy bred that bull. His name was Charleroi, and he bred him to one of our Angus cows, who happened to be carrying. There are such things as red Angus. Most of them are black, but some of them are registered red Angus. And she happened to be carrying the red gene, and with the white and the red gene together, the most beautiful sort of tan-colored calf came out. And Daddy was so fond of that calf, and I have his hide downstairs in my basement right now.
Oh, really?
Yes, that was quite something there.
Isn't it kind of morbid?
Heavens, no moth in my house.
So did you two stay in the area, or
I
you
did.
said, but
She didn't. She got married, and then she had a whole career. She's a doctor, and traveled, and her husband was in the Army, and so they traveled all over. But I stayed on the farm for practically the whole time. I went down to Virginia for about 3 years and worked with Angus cattle there, and putting on Angus sales, and been every state in the Union and Canada, and the Eisenhower farm, and some of the. My neighbor came over the other day, and he said, "Do you know if there's another Carroll Hackney?" And I said, "Not that I'm aware of." Well, he said, "Have you ever been to the Eisenhower barn?" Well, I certainly have, because I used to help there with the Angus, and had breakfast with the Eisenhowers one day, and Mamie showed me all through the house. And he was in the barn, and he said, "Well, there's a plaque in that barn." I said, "Really?" He said, "It says Carroll Hackney, secretary." I had no idea I'm in the Eisenhower barn. We got to go up and see that sometime.
yeah.
You were secretary of the
amazing.
association.
Mhm.
You didn't mention that.
Yeah, the Mid-Atlantic. And Jimmy Cagney. I went up to sell his herd one day because I was advising people. I went up on my own, and he's so funny. You couldn't possibly miss Jimmy Cagney if you remember what he looked like. And I walked over the porch and I said, "Mr. Cagney," and he said, "Who else do you think I am?" And then he said, "I would take you in my house," but he said, "My wife's in there, and she's an old witch." She was just as sweet as she could be, and she was anything. And then we got through the Angus herd and also the Morgan horses that he had, and he said, "Now, would you like to see my etchings?" I mean, you never knew what this man was going to say. But quite a charmer. At Tallulah Bankhead's herd, it goes around for a lot of different places, and meet a lot of wonderful people this way too.
Yeah, so.
Do you remember when your parents sent the cattle down to Jamaica?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Do you want to tell that story?
No, you know it better than I do.
Well, I happened to be up in Connecticut visiting my grandmother, and Daddy had said that he had sold his herd of cattle to Jamaica. They didn't have any Angus cattle down there. And my grandmother and I was sitting watching the evening news, and here was this plane in was it Baltimore, I guess they loaded it out of. And there was my father and my mother and two of their neighbors, and they were loading the Angus cattle onto this airplane to fly them down to Jamaica. And the cattle adjusted very well, and finally during the trip, they all laid down and they were chewing their cud like cattle do. And you know, when they got close to the ground, they could smell the grass, and they all stood up and started mooing. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, so they're
So
smart
I guess they're
animals.
still down there.
What year was that? Do you-
That was 1953.
So it was one of those, looks like a Pan Am Clipper.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just an amazing
Mhm.
picture of cattle
Yeah.
going up onto the plane. And the cattle, also, the other thing that I was interested is that you shipped cattle in and out of Cedarhurst, right?
Every year for the big show years, yes, Daddy got a railroad car. It was a freight car train, and the men went down and put in hay racks and all kinds of things to railing, because you had to tie the cattle when they were in there, and then lofts up here for the feed buckets and the hay and the straw and all the equipment you take to the show. And they would leave out of Cedarhurst, and then they would go on out. We shipped them to Chicago, and Springfield, Massachusetts, Roanoke, Virginia. They went to a lot of different shows.
Go to Kansas
Just-
City?
Who?
Kansas City?
No, we never went to Canton. Never went to Denver either. No, never showed there. I was very much more involved with the cattle than my sister was,
Well, I
because
wasn't there.
she was being a doctor and a mother, and she's got 6 children, and so,
Ah.
and that's one of them right there.
Well,
So
speaking
you
of
left, and did you ever come back? Do you live
To
here
visit.
now?
yeah,
And
4 years ago. I mean,
oh,
I'd come back and visit.
yeah.
But it's going on 5 years now. As I mentioned, the 75 acres is all mine now. The other 2 that Carroll found a nice little farm in Eldersburg. My brother was stationed in Arizona in the military, fell in love with the desert life, and he didn't want to move back, so I've ended up with the whole 75 acres. And shortly after I retired, be 5 years ago at Christmas, I moved back the 75 acres.
She built a beautiful house
We
over
live
there.
now.
Ah.
She's got 4 or 5 horses over there.
Oh, really?
5 or 6 dogs. I never can remember how many.
No Angus, though. Fortunately, my neighbor, Dave Rawning, raises Angus, so I can look out and see black cattle in the field, but I don't have to take care of them.
The nice part of it is he's put them back where they belonged, and he's got very, very good cattle. Dave Rawling is very good cattle, and he shows. And he's been to Denver and had Grand Champion Bull out there, and it usually has in the springtime he has an Angus field day, which is awfully nice. And you have a judging contest, and then they have a big luncheon, and then they have speakers, but it's just great to see the black cattle back over there again.
Yeah. So it sounds
Yeah.
like one of the things we have to ask is about all the changes you've experienced. But it sounds like in your little area, a whole lot hasn't changed.
A whole
as
lot.
far
If you
as
can
the-
imagine, Meg, the dirt roads that were just all around us, nothing was paved, and 91 was just this little narrow road, and to look at it now, but it was wonderful for riding. 'Cause
Go down to Pikesville, remember?
Yeah, we rode
so
all the way to
Vicksburg
Pikesville.
itself,
Down
you've seen.
Nicodemus Road and
Yes,
dirt roads all the way.
we each had a pony, and we rode, just the 2 of us, rode all the way down there, and we spent the night with a friend, and the next day was a horse and pony show, and we both showed there, and then the next day we rode back home again. And my father just, he wasn't concerned. He knew we'd be all right.
That's
even
amazing. You were
crossing
lucky. It sounds
awfully
like
lucky.
you had great
Crossing
parents.
Town Road. I mean, you can just think about, there wasn't any, the speed limit back when we were going to school was 40 miles an hour. We had a bus driver, and he got up to 50 one day, and we were terrified. A hair was standing on end. We told the parents, and he going 50. He got fired.
Oh, really?
Yes, he did. He was an awfully nice old man, but we got an older man too that didn't break the speed limits at all. No, that part.
We didn't use a bus very often because when we got old enough, we did. That was during the war, gas rationing, shortage, and we went to school in Owings Mills,
Oh.
and that was 10 and a half miles, and that was a long distance in those days.
Yeah.
In fact, when we started there, I was going to start in the first grade, and Carol would come along in the second grade. But my mother decided it wasn't worth going that 20-mile round trip twice a day. There was no public school bus to Garrison Park. So she tutored me at home for the first year, and then when Carol came along, with two of us, it made it more worthwhile to drive down. But gradually we got old enough to where we could use public transportation, and there was carpooling from Reisterstown, other kids that were going down. We had a combination of transportations. Take a carpool down, and then come back up to Glendon, right outside of Reisterstown.
Right.
And pick up the Western Maryland train that went. They used to call it the Ma and Pa train. The same one my father would take into Baltimore, commuter train. And we'd sit in the Glendon station for an hour or two. Did an awful lot of homework there.
That was good for that.
And then get a train out to Cedarhurst, and then my mother would pick us up from there.
Wow.
Don't you know
So you
if it snowed, we would walk from Glendon to Cedarhurst. No, we'd take the train to Cedar. We'd catch the early train, not wait for my brothers who were at McDonald at the time. We would take the train to Cedarhurst, and then we would walk all the way from Cedarhurst up to Carroll County, which is close to 2 miles. But the snow was such that we just could not let that snow go without a sled ride. And we had this huge hill that went down like this, and then out onto the pond, which was frozen over with ice.
Geez.
So it was well worth getting home, even if you go on one trip,
Yeah.
if we could do it. Of course, the brothers never could do it because McDonald's school bus was a little bit later.
It's too late.
But that was fun.
You guys lucked into it.
We weren't going to talk about walking the
Oh, walking 2 miles in the snow. Well, maybe we'll close up with it. It seems like time's becoming an issue here. So, if you could describe what's best about Carroll County to somebody who's never been here, what would be your answer to that?
I would say it's mostly rural, and because I'm very politically minded, it is most Republican, and that part I like. I like the commissioners, the way that they're running things, and there are some awfully nice. I have been on the Farm Museum Board, the Historical Society Board, the Humane Society Board. You know, because I love Carroll County, and so these are things that you can. And Sissy is following along in my footsteps, and she's gotten involved with the preservation and what's the other thing you're doing, Sis? Land preservation.
Finksburg Planning and Citizens Council.
Yes, that's right, right here. So these are the and it's peaceful, it's quiet. Every once in a while now we've got 795 that came out, and we do have people that come out that some of the houses have been broken into, and that's very, very sad, because when we were there, we never locked the door, we never closed the windows at night in the summertime, and you didn't worry about anything. But now you have to be a little more careful. But it's still far better than Baltimore.
Yeah.
What do you like?
Well, I just moved back, so I don't have all this historical.
Where were you? Where did you spend most of your practice?
Army for 25
Everywhere.
years, professional Army, and where was I? Very nice places. San Francisco for 4 years, Hawaii for 4 years, Walter Reed for a number of years, and our farthest, only overseas assignment was Bangkok, Thailand.
Ah.
That was 3 years. I loved that. And then back to Walter Reed in Washington. And when I was in Washington, it was very convenient because my family was all here.
Yeah.
But I wasn't living in Carroll County, and I don't have the perspective that Carroll does.
Yeah.
I like it because it's home.
Right. Right.
Another fun story. She was over there in Bangkok, Thailand, and her husband my mother and me, took us out to the farm where they had imported some Charolais cattle, beautiful, beautiful cattle. And he kept telling us that they were so lovely and they were so well cared for, but it was frightfully hot over there. I wondered how they were making out and with all this heat. So he took us out to the barn, opened the door, and this bull went, "Moo! Close the door, they were an air-conditioned barn."
Oh, wow.
They were letting our cool out. Yeah, that was
Boy,
fun.
those were some pampered cattle then.
Very much so.
Mostly they just had water buffalo
Yeah.
prior to that time, and a lot of scrawny cattle that were mainly beef.
Mm.
Like they had in
Things have
Jamaica.
changed a long time.
Like they had in Jamaica. They were just, and so they were importing these Charolais and Angus to improve on the local cattle.
Boy, so you guys have made a difference all around the world then with your cattle, huh? Who knows, living on everywhere.
It's been a very interesting life.
Oh, it sounds
And I was
like
so
very
lucky when that
interesting.
farm got sold. I found a little farm. I didn't want to leave Carroll County, and I found a little farm over in Eldersburg. That was in 1976, and I'm still there.
You're still there.
Yeah, I have 4 horses and dogs and chickens, and
Mm.
got the place on the National Historic Trust because it was built in 1780.
Wow.
Yeah, and the old barn with the stone foundation, and the milk house, the stone milk house down there, and a mounting block out in front of the house where the ladies would walk up the steps and get onto their carriage.
Ah.
It's
Oh boy,
really
so it sounds like a lot of history in your place
lots
too.
and lots of history, and that's why it too was on the tour, the historical tour.
Oh, was it?
Yes,
Ah, I'll have to go on some of these tours.
You got to tell me to stop talking. Because
I think we're getting near the end of our tape. So thank you so much for stopping in and talking with
You're
us.
very
It's been
welcome.
very
we
interesting.
enjoyed it.
Like we could talk all day. I wish we had
You're right.
longer tapes.